good to worship with you on a beautiful January Sunday morning at the Grove. And thank you, all of you who participated already by signing your name to one of these 5 key passions we've been talking about as we've gone through this series of our DNA. We've talked about how we're going to talk about how we are creatives, how we are authentic, how we are missional, we are one. And today, we want to talk about how we will participate. And there's so many ways that we are called to participate with God and on his mission here on earth. When Jesus was here, one of the first things he did, he kept going around talking to individuals he would meet and say, all right, it's time not just to follow me, but to participate with God and what he's doing here. So open in your Bibles to John chapter 1, and we have one of these participate stories, and I'll start reading in verse 40. And we read this: Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the 2 who heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, "We have found the Messiah, that is the Christ." Verse 47. And he brought him to Jesus, and Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You'll be called Cephas," which is translated Peter. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. And Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." "Nazareth? How can anything good come from there?" Nathanael asked. "Come and see," said Philip. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. And Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." And so we have Jesus to 3 different individuals: Peter, Simon, Nathanael. He says, "Come, participate, be part of this movement of what God is going to do here. Follow me." And so our challenge this morning, and it's something we've always championed at the Grove, is for you to participate with God in what he's doing through this church. That's the bottom line. That's where we're heading this morning. So in life, if you think about it, people fall into one of 2 categories. You have participants, and then you have spectators, right? We all know that the Super Bowl is coming to Phoenix this week. And in the Super Bowl, you have either participants or spectators. You have, like 22 players who are participants, and then, but maybe with coaching staff and all the guys on the sideline, let's say it's about 100 participants. And then you have 111 million spectators. There's a vast difference, though, between the participant and the spectator. The spectator has no real outcome, power or say in the outcome of the Super Bowl. The spectator will sit on a couch and believe in his heart or her heart that she can change the outcome. And like if you don't change your clothes, if you don't get up during halftime, the score won't change. We do those things. But the spectator has no real skin in the game. The spectator can't change the outcome of the game, only the participant. The spectator, in many ways, is just a casual observer. I remember years ago watching B.J. Thomas, and if you know who that is, then you've been around. And B.J. Thomas was at Not Scary Farm doing a mini concert, and I went in the back of the room, and I'm watching him sing, and he's singing "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head." Remember that one, some of you? And then halfway through, he stops. He just quits singing. The band stops. And he said, "I just forgot the words to my own song." That's what he said. It was awesome. And he said, "Do you want to know why?" He said, "I'll tell you why. It's that guy back there." And he points to a guy standing in the doorway. He says, "He's back there chomping on a hot dog, and I can't remember what I'm supposed to sing." The guy's just a spectator. BJ, don't get so worked up. He said, "He's licking the mustard off his fingers right now." And he said, "Until he sits down, I'm not singing." That's what he said. It was crazy. Because when you go to watch someone play, it's their problem, not yours. You're just a spectator. And the problem is, when it comes to the mission of God on this earth, in churches, sometimes they're spectators, and the Bible keeps calling us to be participants. I have this on the screen, it's in your handout as a key idea, and let me just read it. Within Christianity, there are two camps. There are two kinds of people. There are those who spectate and those who participate. The true followers of Jesus Christ are those who participate in his mission on earth. And that's the challenge to you today. You see, in decades past, I think churches were okay with just having spectators. People could come and sit and sing and then go home. But this next generation church, this missional church that we keep saying the Grove is a missional church, this missional church responds to Jesus' challenge that all of us are called to represent him in our lives every day and to live on mission. That's how we say it here. And so will you participate in that? The Bible, like I said, has story after story of participants and spectators. One that I remember the most clearly is of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. So the people of Israel are crossing the Jordan River into this promised land. And the people of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they said, things might go really bad. And so we're just going to stay right here, and you guys go. And they said this, they said, we're going to pray for you, and that's what we're going to do. And then they said, travel mercies, as they left. And that's what they did. And Jesus Christ comes along, and he says, no, he invites Peter, James, John, Andrew, all of them, says, come, walk with me, do life with me, and participate. So at the Grove, we keep talking about participating. There's three key life areas that this morning I want to lay out and challenge you to participate in. The first is this, and the most clear is this, to participate in living on mission. Let's go back to our text, John chapter 1, and we read about Philip, because Philip immediately starts to live on mission. We read this, I'll start in verse 43. The next day, Jesus decided to leave Galilee, and finding Philip, he said to him, follow me. Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. And listen to this. Immediately, this is the first thing he does. Verse 45, Philip found Nathanael and told him, we have found the one Moses wrote about. And he says, come, you've got to follow him with me. The first thing Philip does is to live on mission. The last thing in Acts chapter 8 that we read that he's doing is he finds an Ethiopian who's trying to read the Bible, and he jumps in his car with him. Well, he jumps in his cart, his chariot with him, and he says, let me read the Bible with you, and they read it together. And Philip, we read, is constantly on mission like this. And that's the same kind of life we're called to live. The problem is, however, is that so many Christians feel like the things that God calls us to in this world are for someone else to do. The problems of this world are someone else's problem. But at the Grove, we keep saying, no, the problems of this world are yours and mine, not someone else's. And the things that God wants his followers to do, we are to do. There's something called bystander noninvolvement. People, psychologists first became aware of it in 1964, really. What happened is, on a New York summer night, there was a young girl. She was 22 years old. Her last name is Giovanni, and she was attacked. A man broke into her apartment, and he has a knife. And for 20 minutes, she's fighting him off. She gets outside. She's running outside of her apartment building, trying to hide from him. She's screaming for over 20 minutes. Do you know how many people heard her? 37 people heard her cries for help. Do you know how many people came to help her? None. And people were shocked. Why would people hear this and not respond? And so because of that famous incident, a lot of research began to be done on bystander non-involvement, it's called, or the Giovanni syndrome, some now call it. And so there are two researchers, Biblitain and John Darby, and they tried to explore, why do people just stand by when something tragic is happening? And they found three things. They found that first of all, they said, if there's a large crowd of people and you're in trouble, you're really in trouble, because the more people there are, the less likely it is anyone will help you, which is surprising. They said, first of all, people don't respond because we fear embarrassment. What if I jump in there and the person's not really drowning? The second reason we don't get involved is we think, well, there's other people that will do it. It's not my job. Someone else will respond. And if others aren't responding, why should I respond? A third reason that we don't get involved is risk. We think, well, if she's being attacked and I go to her defense, what if he turns on me and I'm attacked? Then I'm in trouble. And so we stand back. And the problem is I share that because sometimes that happens in the church. And the thing is, the researchers have also found that the more we empathize with someone, the more likely we are to be involved. And they've also found that it depends where you get in trouble. For example, these researchers took a small child and they put them on street corners in small towns and in big cities like LA and Chicago. And in small towns, they would have the kids stop passersby. And the small child would say, "Hey, I'm lost. Can you call my parents?" Do you know what % of people stop to help them in small towns? About 50%, which is absolutely dismal. You think, so half the people just kept walking. But it gets worse if you're in a big city in New York and Chicago. 75% of the people walked on by the kid. They said, "Kid, use your own cell phone, I'm in a hurry, I got things to do." And they'd leave the kid standing on the sidewalk. You go, what's wrong with us? And so my point is, at the Grove, we've been trying to change that. We've been trying to say that if there's something that God calls his people to do, we need to do it. One of my favorite examples that I've shared with you is when there was an earthquake in Haiti, if you remember that. For 5 days, our government did not respond. For 5 days, our government said, "We are assessing the situation and it's not safe." So the big United States says it's not safe. So no one for 5 days goes to Haiti after the earthquake. People are buried under the rubble. Finally, I stood up on a Sunday morning at the Grove and I said, "We need your help. We need doctors and nurses." You've heard me say that. And we had about 10 fly down there. And they had been there about 4 days taking care of some 11 children with amputations when I arrived. I arrived on a Wednesday. And when our team from the Grove first arrived, they were the only medical team taking care of these kids. But 4 days later, when I got there, there must have been literally 50 doctors and nurses there. And so the thing is, this clinic was on the Dominican side of the border in Barcelona, and most of the trouble was in Haiti. So I said to our team, I said, "We'll leave tomorrow morning to go into Haiti." And they said, "We can't." And we're at dinner, and this lady's up speaking. I said, "Why can't we go?" They said, "Because she said we can't." And I said, "Well, she can't tell us we can't go." Well, she's up there, and she said, "I heard that there's a group from Arizona that wants to go to Haiti." She says this. She said, "No one's going to Haiti. It's not safe." And the thing is, we came to serve in Haiti, and so I turned to our team, and literally, before I got there, they had loaded a truck with food, and then she had them unload the truck with food and said, "It's not going." So while she's still speaking, I said, "Meet me outside, everybody." I said, "We're leaving at 5 a.m. As I said. And I said, "We're leaving at 5 a.m. And I don't know how she found out, but scuttlebutt got around. And she comes and she finds me. She says, "I said you can't go to Haiti." And she says, "They're going to jump on your truck and loot it. They're going to kill you. You're going to drown in the river." She literally said all those things. And I said, so in so many words, I said, first of all, in so many words, who died and left you in charge? That was my first question, because it was my friend's organization, not hers. Second thing is, in so many words, I said, "You're not the boss of me." And then third thing, your kids tell you that. Third thing, and I said to her, "I rented my own Durango. You can't tell me I can't go." So at 5 the next morning, we left, and we loaded like 7 people into this Durango. And as soon as we crossed the border, we came to Joyce Meyer's clinic. She had so many patients with amputations. They had literally turned the field into a field ward for hundreds of people. They're just laying on mattresses. And the doctors, when we got there, they said to our medical team, they said, "Do you have Percocet?" And we said, "We have boxes and boxes of Percocet." They said, "Oh, can you share it?" And so we did. They said, "We're giving these amputees Tylenol." And so we shared the Percocet with them. And then we went on into Port-au-Prince, and we found Johnny, who runs Good Neighbor Orphanage. And I said, "Johnny, do you need food here?" His kids were sleeping outside. He said, "They haven't had food in days. Please bring some food." And so I went behind the lady's back, and we took all the food back over there. Cruella DeVille, whoever she was. And forget about that. My point is this. God has put you here, not someone else. God has put you here to end the extreme poverty, to love the widow, to care for the orphan. God has put you here to stop the human trafficking. Yesterday was one of my most proud moments of the Grove, because yesterday we partnered with a group called In Our Backyard, and In Our Backyard is led by Nita. Nita is here this morning at the Grove. Nita is trying to spread the word in Phoenix that during the Super Bowl, there's human trafficking is exceptionally high here, and there's young girls brought in from all over the country. And she had found Paul Gunther, and she said, I need 100 people, 50 drivers who will come and be a part of this. I'm contacting churches from all over Phoenix. And Paul said, well, I'll get all 100 people for you. She said, I don't think one church can do that. Something like that. And Paul said, yes, we can. And so when we got there yesterday, she asked how many people are here. And I think the number was 114 people were there from all over Phoenix. And then she said, if you're from the Grove, could you raise your hand? 110 from the Grove. Hi, can we give them a hand, all of our people who participated? And Nita, thank you for what you're doing. But my point is that I love how you, the people of the Grove, are not waiting for someone else to spread that message. And they went to like 500 or 1,000 different gas stations telling the people who work there, please watch for older men who have young girls that they're trying to sell. And please call this number. And so that's what we did yesterday. This, to participate in living on mission, is the doing component of our faith. And at the Grove, you can't help but miss that. But I want to say this. Before you can participate in mission, you must first do something else. You must first participate in this community, this gathering of Christians that we call a church or the Grove. And Jesus' next invitation is to Peter. Let's read about Peter. This is verse 41. And Jesus looked at him, and he said to him, Simon, son of John, you will be called Cephas, which is translated Peter. And then Jesus goes on, when we read in Matthew that he says to Peter, he says, on your life, you'll be a leader, and on you'll build this church. And together, and after I leave, you'll continue this message that I've brought. And so before you can live on mission, before we can do that, we first have to commit to being part of this gathering of Christians that we call a church, or we call the Grove. What does it mean to come together at the Grove and be a church? It means, it's pretty simple. It simply means that we do life together. It's really not any more complicated than that we do life together, and it's good and it's beautiful. We invite you to come in, for example, into our life groups and get together with other individuals or couples or families and just do life together. It's not much more than that. Yes, we study and read the Bible too, but it's really just a way to do life together. That's church. We become a family as we do that. But I love hearing the stories from our small groups and what they do together. Yes, they barbecue, but they also get in their cars, I've heard, and have driven to New Mexico to watch ASU. Some of them rent cabins together in the mountains. Some of them rent condos on the beach and go to Disneyland. Some of them, I heard recently, put together a geocaching night. I don't know what that means, but they went geocaching. And you can look on the World Wide Web and figure that out. But that's what they're doing. And I love how at the Grove, people are just doing life together. In the middle of the Grove, you've heard me say this, we put a coffee shop. Because coffee is a connecting drink. Coffee is a socializing drink. And we hope that when you come here, you connect with other people. And you just do life together. Coffee, they say this about coffee. You can brew your own coffee at home. And over the course of your life, brew your coffee at home as opposed to buy it in a coffee shop like the Grove. And over the course of your life, you'll save $55,000 But I'll say this morning, some things are more important than money. And not the coffee part, but the connecting part. And that's what coffee does, but that's the message of our coffee shop. But the invitation here is to participate in this relational component of our faith. In the Bible, we read about the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And if you think about it, when you read about the Trinity, it's a picture of how God has lived and existed in community for billions and billions of years. And really, Jesus, he came and he starts to rebrand this following of God as a relational pursuit. And God, when he invites us to follow him and to be in community with him, it really is inviting us into this relational connection with him, with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, to be a part of what he's been a part of for billions of years. And so my invitation this morning is to give yourself to this church. Some of you have been, if this were a swimming pool, some of you have been coming to the Grove and you've been standing on the edge and you've been maybe putting a toe in and you've not completely jumped in. And this morning I want to say it's time to stop standing on the fringe and waiting. Some of you I've heard come, I just have heard this, I don't know this. Some people come to the Grove for months or years and they don't give. They feel like someone else should give. And I've heard that some people say, well, I don't trust churches with my money. But then I would ask you back, but you trust us to shape and form the soul of your sons and daughters in our children's ministry. And can I just bluntly and honestly say, if this is your church home, then it's time to give. Because when all of us give, then we can do so much more. And we work so hard at the Grove to be good stewards of what you give us to be a missional church. And so if you've been on the fringe of what's happening here, today is your invitation to jump in with both feet. So the second invitation is to participate in community. But there's a prerequisite to that. Before you can participate in community, you must first participate with God. Let's go back to John chapter 1, and we read about Nathanael. Nathanael was a doubter. He didn't believe. He wasn't all in, and we read this about Nathanael. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, verse 47, he said to him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. And Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Kings of Israel." And so you have this doubter who now turns into a believer. And maybe this morning you came here and you're one of those doubters like Nathanael. And Jesus says it's time to participate with God and with me. And maybe that's you. Maybe Nathanael's story is your story. And you've been doubting the existence of God. You've been doubting what Jesus Christ does. And I hope today I can change your mind. When you read the Bible, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of great reasons to believe in God and to believe in Jesus. In addition to those, I think in the life around us, there are also great reasons and proof for the existence of God. I want to share with you a list. And it's a list of why I believe, and maybe this will help you make up your mind. The first one I'll put up here is I believe there's a God because of sycamore trees. Now, I'm not talking about the sycamore tree that a short guy climbed in the Gospels. His name was Zacchaeus. I'm talking about the sycamore trees in Africa. Growing up and all over Africa, we had sycamore trees around our house. And in the dry season, when the wind blows, it blows the sycamore seed off the tree. And as it's falling to earth, as a kid, I'm only 10, but I noticed, and here's a picture of one, it starts to spin and rotate. It's like a propeller. And as the breeze comes along, it will carry that sycamore seed 100 yards. I've seen them float off into the distance for miles. And we would pick them up and then we'd throw them in the air, and here's one falling. And it's an odd aerodynamic thing that falls from the tree. You wouldn't think it could fly because the seed is at one end. It's just half a propeller, but it spins perfectly and it holds itself in the air. And I'm 10, 12 years old. I'm fascinated by the thing, but I didn't think much about it except, wow, that's great proof for the existence of God, I thought. And then recently, I read this, that engineers at Lockheed Martin have noticed the Sycamore Seed. And they thought the aerodynamics of that are fascinating. And so they began to back engineer the Sycamore Seed. And they've begun building drones based on the design of the Sycamore Seed. So I have this here. Here it is. So they take this design, and now they're making drones with it for the U.S. military. So think about that with me. The U.S. military is borrowing engineering ideas from God. All right, that's just crazy. And you hope God has a patent on it, because somebody should get paid royalties on this design. And it's working. So one of the philosophical arguments for the existence of God is the existence of something. Okay, so you'll hear in the apologetics field, people will say, the existence of matter, because it proves that there's a God. Because if you have matter, simply a rock, then how did it get here? Something cannot self-create itself. So the existence of something is proof for God. I would go one step further. The existence of complex creations by God, like the Sycamore Seed, or like you and your life, are some of the best proofs that there is a God. I think there's a better reason, though, even than the Sycamore Seed. I would say a better proof of the existence of God is the existence of love. I was at our men's Bible study this Wednesday morning. We meet at 6:30. Join us this week, or come Tuesday at 7 o'clock at night. And so Scott Swanson had been teaching about fathers and sons. And when he was done, we were asked to talk about our fathers and our sons. And then one of the fathers sitting next to me, he said, I'm glad I only had 2 sons. I can't really understand how Scott, he has so many sons and he loves all of them, because I thought God had used up all of my love on my 2 sons, because I can love nothing else like them in the world. And then he said, but then I realized God gives us more love when we need it. He said, because then I had a grandson. And he said, Palmer, the love I have for my grandson, he stopped talking at that point. And finally he said, you know what, there's just not enough words in English to explain the love I have for my grandson. And Palmer, you don't know anything about it, because you don't have one. And I didn't know a thing. But love is real in all of us. Love is as real as a Toyota pickup truck, isn't it? It's that real. Every person who's walked on planet Earth has fallen in love. And maybe you're sitting here with someone who you're married to. You can go back to the day you first met them, and you could feel your heart jump in your throat, and you tried to say something to them, and you thought you were going to throw up. That's how you felt. It's called love, and we've all been there. And I would simply say, if we're just matter and bioorganisms, what does love have to do with anything? It doesn't. I think because we fall in love, and because we love our sons and our daughters and our husbands and wife, I believe there's a God. But there's a better reason than that. I think even better than this is toddlers. Toddlers is the next one I have. Because toddlers are my favorite, some of my favorite people in the world are toddlers. I can watch them for hours. They're fascinating. My favorite thing about toddlers is they laugh all the time. They'll take a stick and they'll pretend it's a laser gun, or it's a car or something just bizarre, and they'll entertain themselves and they'll laugh just on their own. They find joy in everything. Now, you laugh a lot less, but my point is this. There is joy and there is laughter in this world, isn't there? And I think joy and laughter is some of the best proof that there is a God. Because, again, if we were just matter, then none of that would matter at all. I believe the existence of laughter and joy proves that there is a God. Trees, cactus don't laugh. Chickens don't laugh. Cats don't laugh at all. They think they're better than you. Your dogs will laugh, but not your cat. All right, let's move on to something more important. Okay, the next, I think there's even a better reason for God, and I'm going to say it's this. Laguna Beach. I think Laguna Beach is a reason to believe there's a God. And I'll start with when I was in college down the road from Laguna. I went there for the first time, and listen to this. There's a basketball court by the beach. Are you kidding me? It's like 2 of the best things in the entire world are in one place. And so on the weekends, we would go there. And then I found out there's an ice cream shop right next to the beach. So you can have ice cream and play basketball and go to the beach at the same time. And then, as I've gotten older, I've gone back and I see that Wyland, who's a painter, he has a gallery right on Laguna Beach, and he does these stunning paintings of whales and of dolphins. And then I met my wife, she wasn't my wife when I first met her, but when I met her, we would go to Laguna Beach for walks. And I remember going back to Laguna Beach from Chicago when I was a college pastor there, and I was with two other pastors, Mark Nesbitt and Matt. And we'd gotten some ice cream, we're walking down the beach at sunset, and it was really romantic, and that's pretty awkward right there. But, and Matt says, I wish she was with me. And I knew he had just gotten married, and I knew he was wishing, and I said, why do you say that, Matt? I thought I knew why. He says, well, because if she was here, if Shasta, my dog, was here, I could be throwing a Frisbee to her right now. That's what he said. And all of that is Laguna Beach. My point is, Laguna Beach is one of the most beautiful places in the world. So if we just got here by chance, wouldn't it just be rocks and dirt? But God has created beauty, and He's given us the ability to appreciate beauty. Every time Scott Erickson paints a new painting that's beautiful, it reminds us there's a God. Every time Josh Havens composes a new song that is beautiful, it reminds us there is a God. Beauty, in my opinion, is one of the great arguments for the existence of God. Okay, the next one I have, even better than that though, better than Laguna Beach's, reasons I believe is because of deflated footballs. All right, you knew that was coming. You knew on this Sunday we couldn't miss that. Can I just preface this by saying that I don't think Tom Brady had the footballs deflated. I think it's just a change in temperature from the locker room to the field. I don't know much. But one of the Colts players said, look, it doesn't matter. Tom Brady could have been throwing a ball of soap that day. They still were going to beat us. And so we've had a week of deflated football nonsense, right? But there's something underneath that. There's something underneath it in that we want justice. It's not fair. It's unjust, overstating that issue. But for one player to have a soft, warm football that's easy to grip and throw, and another player has a football that's as hard as a rock and it's slippery, that's not fair. And so underneath all of this deflated football nonsense is a desire for justice. And on a more serious note, God has created all of us with this deep desire for justice. And more importantly, we want justice for people in the inner city slums. We want justice for the people that live in the shanty towns of South Africa. We want justice for the people that live among the rubble in Haiti. We want justice when people are treated unfairly. When people are beaten and they shouldn't be, we want justice. We have this deep longing for justice, and which points us to a God that put it there. We don't form a moral bearing, a desire for morality, for right and wrong on our own, but it's there because there's a God who put it there. But deflated footballs aren't the best reason to believe in God. In my opinion, an even better reason to believe in God is because of Boston cream pie in Boston. That's what I would say. Because I say this because a couple of years ago I was in Boston with my wife. I was doing a wedding and it was our anniversary, so we stayed a couple of extra days. And I took her out for our anniversary dinner to a restaurant called Legal Seafood on the Boston Harbor. And we get there and I tell them it's our anniversary, so they give us a table right outside on the wharf next to the water. And it's about 6 o'clock and the sun is setting. And then it gets even better because right next door to us was an open amphitheater and Jay-Z is playing love songs. So you got Jay-Z, you've got the sun setting. I'm with the one that I love. And then after we eat the seafood, the service says, would you like a piece of our famous Boston cream pie? Are you kidding me? And I said, I didn't tell her this, but I'll tell you, every year growing up, on my birthday, my mother only made Boston cream pie for me. And so I said, bring the Boston cream pie. And she did. And then so I'm sitting there with the one I love, listening to Jay-Z play love songs, and the sun is setting on the ocean, and I'm eating Boston cream pie. and it hits you. Life is good. We got a slice. Life is good, isn't it? Isn't life good? Don't we have a God that spills out good things, goodness on our lives? I think the existence of things that are good in this world is one of the greatest proofs that there is a God. He gives you sons and daughters and wives and fathers and mothers. He gives you good neighbors. He gives you good co-workers. He gives you good things in this life. And I think all of that goodness that God gives us is one of the great proofs that there is a God. But that still is not my favorite proof for the existence of God. I think the best proof for the existence of God is Jesus Christ himself. And I say that not flippantly or loosely or just generically. I say because Jesus Christ changes lives. Because of his ability to change the lives of people is one of the best arguments that there is a God. You see, 2,000 years ago, Jesus right away started to change lives. He would meet these dishonest tax collectors who were cheating people, and their lives would change upside down, and they'd return people's money, even double what they gave back. He got to know, for example, gruff, angry politicians like a man named Saul, and he becomes a gentle, loving, kind-spirited person. We read in the Bible of women who were being abused or their bodies were being sold, and Jesus gives them dignity and worth, and he gives them new value and a new start on life. 2,000 years ago, we saw over and over that Jesus changed lives. But here's the best part. It didn't stop 2,000 years ago. For the last 2,000 years, he's been in the life-changing business. And here's my argument. The person who doesn't believe in God, or let's say the atheist, has nothing to say about changing lives. There are some stories you just never hear. For example, you never hear, I was an alcoholic and I was addicted to alcohol, but then I read Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, and I stopped drinking ever since. That story's not out there. It's just not. You don't hear stories like, I was alone and lonely and wanted to end it all, and then I had a professor who explained the Big Bang Theory to me, and now I feel so much love. And it's just not there. Those stories don't happen. I used to be selfish and greedy, and then I read Hamilton dynamics theory, and he explained how we were algae and now we're people. And that's just changed I'm so generous now because of that. And I sponsor children in Bangladesh who are orphans. Those stories aren't there. It's not. But people who get to know Jesus Christ, it changes everything. It changes everything about us. And like I said, those stories didn't stop 2,000 years ago. They happen over and over and over. One of my favorite is a story that Lee Strobel tells in his book, A Case for Faith. In A Case for Faith, Lee Strobel writes about Bill Moore. And now understand, Lee Strobel, before he believed in Jesus, he was a reporter with the Chicago Tribune. He was an investigative reporter. And he had read about this fascinating story of a guy named Bill Moore. So he found Bill Moore. He said, tell me your story. And Bill Moore's story starts with a man owed him $5,000. So he killed him. That doesn't go well usually. And so he ended up in prison. And they gave him a life sentence. In fact, they put him on death row. While he was on death row, two men came to see him, two men that Jesus sent. He tends to do that to men on death row. And these two men come and they tell him about Jesus Christ and how Jesus can change everything about him. And Bill Moore believes. He doesn't just believe, but it changes who he is. And he starts to tell other men on his cell block about Jesus, and he has one person after another believe in Jesus, and they pray, and their lives are changed. And then men all over the prison hear that Bill Moore is a good listener, and he has wise counsel. So men, when they were really angry about life in prison, they would come to Bill Moore, and he would counsel them. He was such a gifted counselor that pastors in the Chicago area started to hear about Bill Moore, and they would send people from their church to Bill for counseling. I'm not making this up. They would come to their pastor, and he'd say, I'm not a professional, but let me send you to Bill Moore, and here's the directions to prison. And they would go, and they would say, well, what should I pay him? And their pastor would say, well, maybe 2 cartons of cigarette and then a 6-pack of Mountain Dew. Okay, I made that up. But anyway, But the truth is, they kept going to Bill Moore for years, and he was changing people's lives all over Chicago. And finally, the authorities heard about his story, and they commuted his sentence and gave him freedom through parole. And then he became a pastor. He went back to the neighborhood in inner city Chicago, and he began to pastor a church. And that's where Lee found him. And so Lee said, so Bill Moore, let me get this right. Was it some kind of counseling program that changed you? Or was it some kind of medication or some therapy you went through? Or a book that you did? And Bill Moore said, no, Lee, I told you. It wasn't any of that. It was Jesus Christ. He said, Jesus changed everything about me. And so maybe this morning, that's your story. Maybe this morning you walked through the doors of this church and you didn't believe there was a God. Maybe you doubted like Nathaniel. Maybe this morning you thought, I've heard a lot about Jesus, I've heard a lot about God, but I just don't see that it's true. But maybe while you were here this morning, you heard a voice whisper to you, I am alive. Jesus is real. Maybe you heard that this morning. If that's you, I want to invite you to pray a prayer with me. Could everyone here, could you bow your heads with me? Just close your eyes and bow your heads. And I want to ask you again, if you came in here today and you have never said, God, I believe in you, and I believe that your son, Jesus Christ, died on the cross so that I can be forgiven of all my sin. If you came in here and you were a doubter, maybe even an atheist, and you thought in your heart, there is no God, Jesus is not real. If that was you, but you heard God whispering to you today, I am alive, and I am real, and I can change you. If that's you, then could I ask you to do something really brave and bold right now? Could I invite you to stand? Because I want to pray with you. And could everyone else just keep your heads bowed? But I want to invite you to stand if that's your story this morning. And if today you are ready to give your life to Jesus Christ, then stand. Thank you for standing. Thank you for standing. Thank you. I'm glad you've stood today, because Jesus Christ can change. Everyone just keep your head bowed, because I want to pray together with these that are standing. And it's not too late. If today you've never prayed that prayer, thank you so much. God is going to change everything about you. He can, and he will. Okay, just quietly, those of you that are standing, just very quietly in your soul, would you pray these words with me? God, I believe. God, I need a Savior, because I know that in my past there's been so much wrong. So God, I ask you to forgive me. God, I believe that you sent your son, Jesus Christ, to die on a cross and rise again so that everything I've done wrong can be forgiven forever. And God, I promise today to follow you with all my heart as long as I live. And I ask you today to be my Father from heaven and for eternity. In Jesus' name, amen. Can we applaud those who stood? Can we do that, everyone? Can you stand? Could all of you stand with us? Please stand together, everybody. And we're gonna sing. But thank you, all of you. At the end of our service, if those of you who stood or if you did not yet stand, we have people to pray with you against this back wall. So if you want someone to pray with you, just come over here at any time between now or when we're done.